it's like if nothing else happens, this was an important contribution to what's happening here.
This is such a complicated thing. What is right, what is wrong, because it's not always black and white.
People that have been involved in Higher Ground say there's something special about it, say that there is a family-like bond, that they do take care of one another, and that's ingrained in everything we do.
These aren't our stories, and we don't ever claim that they are. They're our community stories.
I learned to dance around with you, and I can't talk the moon right off the roof. I learned to speak without words, and I can raise a fist and still be heard. I learned to have you gotta steal, never pay nothing for a meal. Oh, the river taught me to run, run, run. The river taught me to run.
Harlan County is in the eastern United States. It's in the heart of the southern Appalachian coal fields. Harlan County was once very densely populated during the height of coal employment in the 30s and 40s. It was once the third most populous county in the state. But of course now the county has dropped from a peak population of around 80,000 to probably around 28,000. And Higher Ground is about the people in this community.
All of the stories that are in this play were collected in Harlan County for this project. A lot of them were collected from within the cast. These are stories that some people are telling their own stories in this play.
Higher Ground is in no way like separate from the community. It is the community, and it's always been a question of making sure that we're representing the stories and the people in the community that make up what is Higher Ground. When I see young folks being activated in their communities in order to take care of each other, that's exactly what I want for Higher Ground. We've always said that we're a family. People that have been involved in Higher Ground say there's something special about it, say that there is a family-like bond, that they do take care of one another, and that's ingrained in everything we do. It's not just theater, it's not just art, it's not just this collection of events and projects that we've accumulated over time, but it's a group of people that checks in on one another, that takes care of one another, that wants to be with each other.
And I swear, in order to get him to get out there and cut that tree, I had to get that game controller out of his hand, hold it out over the fish tank water, and threaten to drop it in there before he'd get out there and trim that tree.
I've been associated with Higher Ground from afar forever. My dad was part of the first show in terms of doing the lights and everything way back, I guess, in 2005. I was an audience member of the first show. Thought it was amazing to see the amount of collaboration it took to produce the show. I mean, all facets of the community. Then to actually see it there and to see the engagement of the performers, working in tandem with professional artists that they brought in to raise the production level. There was a real sense of pride in that, and that stuck with me forever.
My name's Robert Geip, and I'm very glad that all of you are here for this play. It's a brand new play. We've never done it for an audience before, and we're very grateful to all the good people here in Letcher County who have been working on the harm reduction project.
I never liked theater. When I was in 6th grade, I was made to be the woodsman in an operetta called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I had to sing a solo called I'm a Terrible, Terrible, Terrible Man. And everyone in the community laughed at me when I sang that solo as a 12-year-old. And so I never was much interested in theater after that. But I'm, professional, good community man. And so in 2001, 2002, my community college students and Dr. Silver, Roy Silver, and other students started doing a community process where we were asking people in the community about the opioid crisis. About that was when OxyContin was relatively new and enormously damaging to our community, and so we had a
opportunity to apply for a grant that used the arts to address a challenge in the community. And one of the things people talked about was how in their youth, these were older people, that most of the smaller schools would have community performances where, and some of them talked about how everybody'd have to do something, recite or play the harmonica or whatever, but this was kind of a tradition in the community that had passed away, and that they were interested in how to bring that back as a way of getting people together. Because what kind of came out was that, the arts, if people are a part of it, it's a great way to just create safe spaces and informal spaces for people to talk about things. So we were just looking for ways to use arts to get people in conversation, not necessarily in the art itself, but in the process of making the art. So when we got the money, we ended up hiring a playwright in Johnson City. She would make a script of them, and then the community would work with professional theater artists to put their stories in a context that looked like professional theater, but still would involve local people and local people as actors and as musicians. And so in 2004, I guess, we started rehearsing our first play. And first play had, I think, 80 people in it, and all Harlan County people, and 16 or 17 musical numbers. I mean, it was a big production, and it was pretty
From the beginning, it was about how do people begin to build bridges of communication from neighborhood to neighborhood, within families, across communities within the county. And some things are too important not to talk about.
And so it was interesting after that. Some people said, let's just do the same play over and over. And I said, no, let's see what other stories we can hear. Let's see what other issues we can use this as a vehicle to think about. And so, and we just finished our 8th. It was very grounded in listening first, right? Like, let's just go out and do some formal listening, structured interviews with no intent on using them, but just find out where people are. And I think that from the beginning, it was important, I felt like, to have a maximum feasible participation of the people, right? And so we were, trying to hear as many people, trying to hear as many ideas for what people would want to actually participate in. After we did that first play, it's like I felt like I had made I had made a contribution to this place and to the culture, and that that it felt so important that I don't have to worry that I have lived and not contributed to this whole thing that is Appalachian life and culture.
It just happened that I was there the night that they had a rehearsal, and so Alexia invited me, and I fell in love then. Just the people in this story that they were telling, and it was so personal to them, and it was incredible to watch. And people from all walks of life coming together to do theater is just the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. And so after the rehearsal, I sort of joked with Robert and said, hey, if you ever need a stage manager, I'm available. And he asked me what I was doing in the fall, and so that's how I got here. Yeah.
How are you doing? One of the first questions that I ask when I talk to people is just, how are you doing? How are you doing with everything that's going on? And it's usually things about, it's things involving this quote unquote new normal. It's about COVID. It's about quarantine. It's about how life looks differently now than it did before. There's conversations about the impact that this is having on people's relationships, for better or for worse, the way that perspectives are being changed, for better or worse, the ways that people interact with one another online, for better or for worse. are all some of the like broader things.
Who can I pay for this meal? I ain't gonna move. I gotta pay somebody for this meal.
You can pay me. Stop that! You know how salt-headed she is.
Dealing with the issues that we deal with in central Appalachia, specifically in southeastern Kentucky, they're real issues. And to have the opportunity to allow the community to discuss those issues in an open format, and the possibility to, number one, educate, right? That's the whole purpose of talking to one another, is to gain information from one another. So talking openly and honestly, right? So we can actually educate one another on the issues at hand. But then most importantly, heal. Because once you can like physically see someone else's suffering, and if you're not a psychopath, you can empathize with that person. And so even though you're not experiencing that hardship, you can relate on them on an emotional level.
I think that working with Southeast has given us the opportunity to provide more education and even more ways of interacting with art for our community members. So I know with Foglate's, Robert, in the summer of 2013, they got a bunch of different classes for the community, but also found ways to provide scholarships so that people wouldn't necessarily have to pay for those classes. But they're still getting a really great education while doing the work to make art in their community. The audience is the final piece, and they're so excited at that point because they're ready. Even if they don't think so, they're ready to share their story and what they've been working so hard on with their family, with friends, with people they don't know. And it's so great to see that and to be a part of it.
A lot of the plays have ended up being about, why can't we talk about this? You know, if you look at the scripts, it's one of the themes is just kind of characters are wanting to talk about things and somebody saying, no, we can't talk about that. And the wages of not talking about things. And that we kind of stumbled on that in the third play, because that was the one where we started talking about strip mining and whether or not to sell one's land. And a couple of the people, the families in the cast were like, well, you know, I work in the mining industry, and we love higher ground, but if it's going to be too stridently anti-mining, you know, it's like, more power to you, but we're just going to have to sit this one out. So we took that seriously, and so tinkered with the script and softened things, and till finally that person said, you know, if you're going to be this mealy-mouthed about it, why even talk about it?
We tried to bring Harlan County together, to work together on one project, and we started writing stories about the experience we went through while we were working in the coal mine and stuff.
Plays it's been comical, it's been sad, but it's about reality. That's what's the main thing that counts. It's not something that you just write up. You know, it's made a big impact on this community.
They just kind of spontaneously went into a speech about how when they graduated high school, you know, that after the graduation ceremony, which took place at that time at the Baptist Church in downtown Harlan, that their parents were just hugging their children like they were going off to war or something, because they knew that most of those kids would never live in Harlan again, and so they were basically saying goodbye.
You just can't talk about stuff around here. It's really hard to talk about anything, whether it's coal or, you know, different religions or, you know, different sexualities. You just can't. And Higher Ground was just miraculous to me because everyone loved it, and it talked about coal, and it was safe to talk about it.
He talked about
unions and why we don't talk to our kids about unions. Talked about women's issues and race, and some of these guys are involved. We did a play about needle exchanges and and the humanity of addicts, and how do you be humane towards someone who's caused so much harm in your family and your community. But always, you tried to present the full scope of life, that is singing, there's dancing, there's funny stories, but then also it's not going to hurt to talk about this, even though it has hurt to talk about it.
She just started slurring her words and falling over and just acting absent-minded, and I didn't know what to do. I was just a kid. So I took her and I laid her in the chapel floor in the hospital and just waited. I waited for 2 hours for her to move or for something. She didn't. And now that she's gone, every drug addict I see is her.
Growing up, I was literally like carried from one concert to the next concert as a young child, and so I got to kind of see what it was like to be an artist. But the coolest part about the childhood was to meet the artist. When you are a young person and you're getting to interact with these people who think quite deeply about subject matters of their time, and behind the scenes they talk openly, and that left a humongous impact on me growing up. So when I went to college, I got a music scholarship to attend my undergrad, and I didn't really take it seriously. But then I met a professor who changed my life, and she introduced me to opera, and there is where I fell in love with theater. I always knew I wanted to kind of act as well, but in opera I got to do both. I got to be challenged in all aspects. And the beautiful thing about opera, and very much like Higher Ground, we bring all of the disciplines in.
How do we bring people together across barriers that have been in this community for so long to talk about things that are not easy to talk about? And it does represent, I think, something about, our current situation where the right doesn't talk to the left, and the polarization and not being able to get anything done on the bigger stage. It's very much here too, but how can we use the plays to encourage people to not give up on the people that are different, that think differently than them, and to keep this conversation going? I mean, that's what performance is, really. It's practicing together, playing together.
We've had an impact in Harlan County. People still want to do the work, and this is the thing I have to remember as somebody who has been basically a professional, whatever I am, is that, that it's work, it's my job. But for a lot of the people who are involved in Higher Ground, it's not work. It's their thing that feeds them spiritually. And so I have to remember that, right? That they're doing this as to relax in a lot of ways, and just to be in fellowship, and to sing and dance and tell funny stories. And so, but I think that, that in itself is an impact. That's a quality of life enhancement. I definitely think that the mural work that we've done, that's a kind of a spin-off of Higher Ground, is something that, makes the town more interesting looking. And I remember an investor coming through and said, we'd like to put some money in Harlan, but we're having trouble seeing that anybody else cares enough to put some money into. It's like, what would we be adding on to? And so that was when I started thinking, well, man, we at least need to get this mural project going. I mean, it's interesting, it's like
to what extent can any arts organization take credit when there start to be restaurants and bars and people are like, man, it's more fun to go downtown, you know. I saw an opportunity to keep the work going that would be easier if I left a spot for somebody, for the next person, if that makes sense. We've hired some local people or people who are local to staff the work. I have gone part-time, semi-retired, and so we're kind of starting over in a way. That's an interesting thing about having a next generation. They're like, well, what are we supposed to do? I'm like, no, that's not a question. You should ask the old dude who's already done all this stuff. You should get out and find out from people in the community what you're supposed to be doing. And you know, the future's unwritten, that you've got to write it. They started June 1. They're working on a new play, so they're meeting the cast, doing porch sittings, socially distant, masked up, they tell me, and they're trying to figure out how to do higher ground in this new environment.
You're trying to hit the ground running but with COVID, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But art has that way of bringing people together for one common goal, whether that's a play, whether it's a mural, whether it's whatever. And that's the really cool thing about Higher Ground is that they keep trying to foster that sense of community and everything.
We're still learning the process as creative directors. So we're new to all facets of the story gathering process. And so we are constantly getting community feedback in every aspect of the story gathering process. So like right now we're just interviewing and just saying, hey, we got some new leadership going on. Our next phase is gathering the stories. After we gather the stories, we're going to tell those stories to people and get their feedback from them. We constantly make sure that the authenticity of our stories are intact. Because if we're not doing our job. Once the script is written, we then, again, community feedback. Like, what's not right here? What's not right in telling your story? We need help.
We've spent the last month having one-on-one interviews with folks that have been involved in Higher Ground, past and present. Not just for us as the newcomers, in order to get to know folks and making sure that we're interacting with the community to the best of our ability, but also safely. So it's either been digital or by phone or 6 feet away on people's porches, whatever works for folks. But it's also been kind of taking stock of what has been, well over a decade worth of Higher Ground's work to see what does this time of transition look like, and how do we move forward together.
You don't know what you're in for. It's going to tug on them heartstrings. It's going to get you, but it's probably one of the most worthwhile experiences of my life, watching and being a part of it.
Be prepared. You're going to cry. You're going to laugh. You're going to fall in love, and you're really going to just be amazed.
We circle up at the beginning and end of every rehearsal, and we hold hands, and we really, really think of each other as a family. Like, these people are my happiness, and I know for a fact that so many of them come here, and this is their happiness as well.
It's kind of things that have accumulated over time and things that we've kind of wanted to talk about before, but we didn't feel like it was ready, like it was the right time. But I really feel like on this one that it's the time, it's time for us to just get out and say what we need to say.
Don't run for cover, no. Don't run from the coming storm.
Valleys where I sow my very soul. I remember how the wind blew cold. Felt the darkness oozing in my veins. whisper low my name. Try to find a way, try to hold on tight, but you can't see the light for the dark. Ain't no need for fussing, ain't no need to fight, 'cause I know all you want is to go home. Well, I never cared